If you really think about philanthropy, it has or should have the highest risk appetite of any capital. Take chances, take risks, because if it pays off, then the social return on your investment is going to be massive. Impact investing looks at both the financial return, and you could look at it as, an interest-free loan or a low-interest loan.
It has to be patient capital.
It has to be patient capital.
Both have to go hand in hand.
Both have to go hand in hand. We're a country of 1.5 billion people. Educating 300 children is not even going to scratch the surface. It's not going to scratch anything. We have more Indian billionaires now than we've ever had.
Exactly.
So by that stretch, the quantum of giving should also be significantly more. It's nowhere near that.
Welcome to Planet People Profit. I'm your host Sudipto Day. Our guest is someone who believes in and has demonstrated over the years the power of networks to catalyze social impact at scale. Naina Subberwal Batra has led the largest social investing network in Asia for more than a decade now. We reached out to Naina to understand what it will take to position India as a global force for philanthropy and social innovation, advancing the country's vision for a Viksit Bharat by 2047. Naina, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sudipto. Delighted to be here.
Great. I believe you grew up in Calcutta.
Yes.
And it'd be, curious to know, how did you land up in philanthropic capital space, and could you take us through your journey?
Sure. I sometimes think about it. It's actually interesting. So I grew up in Calcutta in the 70s. I think very much socialist India. And I went to a convent school, which I think has a lot to do with it. I think, at that point, we had a lot of focus on how India was very middle class. I think we all grew up solidly middle class, and there was never really any idea as to wealth, and it was much more about sort of equality. And I think all of these socialist ideals that kind of came through, also the fact that Calcutta was part of West Bengal, which was very much then a Marxist government. So I think all of that played a big role on really looking at what you could do to give back. I went to college in the US, and I chose to come back very specifically because I really believed if people like me didn't come back, then, what chance did our country have, and how would we sort of then say that this was the place to live, and it had enormous potential. And I still believe that very strongly today. Philanthropy happened quite by accident. I started my career as a banker, in between ran an art gallery, and then ended up in strategy consulting, where I worked for Monitor, which doesn't exist anymore. It's now Monitor Deloitte. And I worked in their mission-driven practice called Monitor Inclusive Markets. And that's when I actually understood or learned about businesses at the bottom of the pyramid. And, I was telling you, Sudipto, we did this study called Emerging Markets, Emerging Models, and really looked at business models that had a positive social impact, but also could be scaled and made profit. And I thought that was magic. I mean, you really think about frugal innovation, and you really think about entrepreneurialism. Nobody does it better than in rural India.
Absolutely.
Because the needs are so high. You're living on the ground, and this is much before movies like Padman or whatever else that they formed, Toilet, where you really saw innovation that came through. We studied this hatcheries business where the women of the house actually slept with the chickens because it made them more productive, and they laid more eggs.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stories that made me really sort of fascinated with this. I ended up moving to Singapore, and I was headhunted to run AVPN. At that point, it was called Asian Venture Philanthropy Network. I had no idea what venture philanthropy was, never run a network, never worked in Asia, outside India. I thought I would do it for 2 years and then I'd find something else to do. And 12 and a half years later, I'm still running AVPN. So yeah, I guess I found impact in running networks.
And Kolkata had
a stellar role in playing it. Even now, I feel, I think Kolkata is a very authentic, and we were just saying, very authentic, very real place. It's hard to in Kolkata. People will laugh at you.
Absolutely. I totally echo that. I was going through one of your interviews on LinkedIn, and interestingly it said, and there was a line that you mentioned and it stayed with me, and you spoke about the fact that you don't need to be rich to be a philanthropist. And that was the line, and I think it's a very typical Calcutta line also. Like anybody in Calcutta will sort of, empathize with that. They'll know, is that what, is that what the philosophy of, philanthropy that AVPN espouses? Is that the whole philosophy?
So I think yes, Shudip. So because we are a very Asian network, and I think in Asia, unlike the West, you don't give because you get a tax cut. You give because you've grown up with your values telling you to give. And it's across Asian countries, not just in India. I can tell you this because we give when we go to the temple or the church or the mosque. We also give to our communities. And in the West, you only count institutional philanthropy. But in India, South Asia, Southeast Asia, for instance, if someone asks you for help, you don't think about it, you give it. Now you think about yourself as well, right? You have someone who works in your home. She'll come and tell you that, somebody's hurt themselves or they need to go to hospital. Without thinking, you will give the money.
Absolutely.
And you will not think whether you are going to get it back or not get it back. That is philanthropy.
Absolutely.
What else is it?
This concept of langar, if you see in North India, and in East India and many parts of India, this, Duridra Narayan Bhojan.
Yes.
That's sort of ingrained in your culture.
It is. Very much so.
And
very much
that's
so.
Giving.
That is giving. And that is giving in its purest form. So, who ever said that you have to be a Rockefeller or a Bill Gates to be a philanthropist? I think in Asia, every single person is a philanthropist. Whether you are an ordinary Muslim that gives 2.6% of your giving, of your wealth, or you're a Hindu who goes to the temple and gives, or you're a Christian who gives on the plate on Sunday, we all give in our own ways, in our own different ways. And I think it's important to celebrate that. We don't count, and there isn't enough studies that actually count household giving. If you did that and you look at the World Generosity Index, Asian countries like Myanmar, Indonesia, India come very high up in the rankings as compared to Western countries. So, yes.
In fact, we saw that during the COVID times.
Yes.
Those couple of years of COVID.
100%.
We saw how people went out, reached out to other people, and it was natural.
Yeah, I think we discovered our humanity in COVID.
Exactly. But has it sort of, post-COVID, has it sort of helped the cause of philanthropy?
I definitely think so.
Yeah.
I think people have realized that you can't do anything on your own. We don't live in a vacuum, you live with people. So, unless you take everyone along, it's not going to work. And I think what has been really interesting is the next generation. Now, whether or not they have grown up with more than, the previous generation, they have grown up with a far higher degree of responsibility to the world, the planet, to society, and less of a desire for consumption. And I think that is something that is changing the way philanthropy is going to be done and the amount of capital that is being unlocked for philanthropy and for social investing. Obviously, governments are also playing a big role across Asia. I think across Asia, India included, governments are realizing that social costs are too high just for the government to bear.
Absolutely.
And it's important that corporates, that individuals also contribute. And that's why if you look at it, the CSR law which other countries are desperate to copy, has actually unlocked almost $4 billion today.
Exactly.
And I think, also to the surprise of many, the money has not just gone into one black box. The money has actually gone into helping opportunities, helping and scaling organizations.
This you refer to power of networks in many of your LinkedIn posts and many of your talks, especially when it comes to impact investing. Give us a sense, especially with the AVPN experience, how did this whole, this network effect plays out?
So I think, thank you for asking me that, because, networks are really important, but nobody likes to pay for them and nobody wants to acknowledge them. But without a network, any network, you can't get from place A to place B. And why are networks like AVPN crucial is because they're intentional. Now, this is a joke anywhere in the world. Two Indians will get together, they will sit, within 5 minutes, they will find 10 people they know in common. But that's unintentional. But if you and I sit together and say, hey, I have a problem, I want to really look at how climate change is affecting agricultural output, it's an intentional conversation. What networks do is actually make these intentional conversations happen. And they bring together different people, especially a network like AVPN, which I will actually go out on a limb to say is unusual. Because what AVPN does is it brings unusual allies together.
Okay.
It brings philanthropists, it brings corporates, it brings government and policy makers, and it brings investors. And by doing that, you actually connect what I call as an ecosystem. So, an impact investor is looking for both a financial return and a social return. A philanthropist is looking for a social return. So when you first start, doesn't matter whether that business has social impact or not, when you start a business as an entrepreneur, you have no idea whether it's going to succeed or not.
Absolutely.
It's incredibly risky. The only people who are going to put money in it are friends, family and fools. So that is where philanthropy comes in. And if you really think about philanthropy, it has or should have the highest risk appetite of any capital. Philanthropy is money you have earmarked to give away. So if you're not expecting it to come back, then why are you worried about what is the return I'm going to get on it? That is a bugbear I have with philanthropists. Take chances, take risks, because if it pays off, then the social return on your investment is going to be massive. But where impact investment comes in is if philanthropic capital can de-risk that initial investment, then investment capital can come in and take it to scale. And that is what networks like us are trying to do, is actually help be that sticky surface where one can connect with the other.
So what you're saying is, correct me if I'm wrong, so basically philanthropy is giving.
Yes.
Okay, and you don't expect return.
You shouldn't.
Okay, and impact investment will be the next stage where we expect the capital to return, some part of the capital at least, so you can give back again, or maybe you can scale up.
Yes.
Is that how it is?
Correct. Absolutely. So impact investing looks at both the financial return, and you could look at it as, an interest-free loan or a low interest loan. The money comes back, you sort of employ it into the system. But more often than not, impact investors are actually looking at a return on capital.
Absolutely.
Where a financial return on capital. Where I think the problem happens is that the financial return or the expectation of financial return overtakes the expectation of social return.
Okay.
And that's when the investor starts putting pressure on the entrepreneur to say, focus more on your financials rather than what is the impact you're trying to create. And that's the tension that we see. Okay. Because the entrepreneur has started because he's solving a problem. His solution is there to solve that problem. If you take away the social impact of it, then it can be just any business. It's not different. So I think we need to kind of reach that balance where the social return has, if not anything else, an equal footing with the financial return. That's not there a lot of the times.
Is it very Asia specific, or is it something that you see across?
No, it's global, which is why the amount of capital that actually goes in. So if according to the Global Impact Investing Network, we currently have $1 trillion. And I think that's generous. That's deployed as far as impact investing is concerned. $1 trillion of investment capital is nothing when you look at capital markets today. So it's a very small amount. And the reason being that most impact investors still see impact investment as being very risky. And they are scared to put their money in. They're not really so focused on the impact that it's going to have, which is why then philanthropy has to play a role. But philanthropy, unfortunately, even if you look at, the largest quantums are still only in the billions, not in the trillions. So it really can't take on that role. So we still need other people, whether you look at development finance institutions, whether you look at banks, whether you look at corporate CSR, to really underwrite that risk.
So essentially what you're saying is that, of course there has to be risk appetite, and that there's a high risk appetite here. You have to have a risk appetite. And the second part is that you need to also, it has to be patient capital.
It has to be patient capital.
Both have to go hand in hand.
Both have to go hand in hand. And that's where I feel that, development finance institutions can do a lot more. They were set up to provide development finance. Unfortunately, they have become more risk averse than the most blue chip banks themselves.
It's an interesting place where you come from, in the sense that you've seen all the Asian philanthropists, and philanthropy as a concept, of course, is very Western.
Yes.
But you are, putting it in the Asian context. What are the sort of, could you take us through give us some anecdotes in terms of how is Indian philanthropist different from a Chinese philanthropist or any other country, Asian country philanthropist?
You're
some
going to
interesting.
Get me into trouble. Okay. So I'll be very candid, Shudip, though. Indian philanthropists like to do things themselves.
Okay.
The number of operating foundations that we see in India, I think, are amongst the highest in the world. And that's because there is a lack of trust in the non-profits that actually exist on the ground.
Okay.
So because of that, Indian philanthropists, I feel, and a lot of them are first generation philanthropists. Let's take out the Tatas and the Birlas from it. And there's a difference between the philanthropy done by the Tatas through the Tata Trusts or the Birlas, where they actually built public institutions of good. Whether, I'm sure all of us have been to a Birla Planetarium.
Absolutely.
Or a museum, or something which was built as a public institution of good. If you look at today's philanthropists, a lot of them are creating their own institutions. The government of India has the biggest school system infrastructure there is. It may not always work, but we don't need to build our own schools. We are a country of 1.5 billion people. Educating 300 children is not even going to scratch the surface. It's not going to scratch anything.
Absolutely.
What we need to do is support those schools. What happens in other places, especially in countries like China, where the government has a very strong hold.
Okay.
The government directs where that philanthropy is going.
Okay.
So the philanthropist themselves is not taking such a chance or deciding, or doesn't have that decision-making power that I will now create my own foundation. I will actually design the program because I don't trust anybody on the ground. And so there are good things and bad things with doing that. You can't replace government, no matter how rich you are. You have to work with government.
Absolutely.
And one of the things I think Asian philanthropists have realized or do realize is that scale only comes with working with government.
Okay.
So I think we need to switch that. We are seeing that happen, not fast enough. Corporate CSR is very different like that. They tend to support institutions on the ground, partly because they don't have the resources, human resources, to actually run their own programs, partly because they have only a 12-month window to deploy their money. But they tend to do a lot
But
more.
would you agree that in India specifically, when CSR or the corporate social responsibility came in, 2014 onwards, would you agree that was the first sort of early flush of formalization of giving in India?
Absolutely. It was the first time I think the government was very clear that it wanted private sector to come in on social projects. And I think it was initially an experiment that both sides were very wary about. But I think it's been a resounding success. It's been a resounding success, and everyone I talk to says without that stick or without that that defining sort of law, so much capital would not have been unlocked. And in fact, most Asian countries are trying to copy that model now.
So are you saying that both CSR and philanthropy, of course, predates CSR?
Yes.
Both can tango. And
they can, and they should. What we need to do though is, and it is happening, I mean, Indian philanthropy quantums are growing year on year. They definitely are. But we still have, a lot of Indian high net worth individuals are business people.
Okay.
They've made their money through business. So they have a corporate foundation which does the CSR money. What is the need of the hour is for more of them to also do individual giving, not just limit their giving to their corporate CSR. And I think that will unlock a lot more philanthropic capital in India.
But, just taking the argument, flipping the argument, this thing like, we know family offices have come up and, CSR is there. So if I'm sitting in a position where I have a company which is supposed to contribute 2% of my net profit, I also have a foundation, which is my own foundation. Where should I put my money? Should I go for my foundation? Should I go for the corporate CSR?
The corporate CSR is supposed to be your business's money. Your individual money should be going into your own foundation and you should be spending it, not creating other structures that money pays for. Unfortunately, Sudipto, a lot of it is the left hand goes to the right hand.
Exactly. I was coming
and you
to
don't
that.
really see that. No, it's true.
Yeah.
It is true. And it's an issue. And we have to start addressing that. If we don't call out the elephant in the room, what is it going to be? I mean, we're just going to be staring it at the face. If you look at it, we have more Indian billionaires now than we've ever had.
Exactly.
So, by that stretch, the quantum of giving should also be significantly more. It's nowhere near that.
What's your this thing like? If you go, is there a sort of a thumb rule anywhere? Like, if you have, the way wealth has grown over the last 30 years in India, where should philanthropy be? Where, if you've seen so much wealth happening, is there a thumb rule? Is there something which will help people understand where we are, where we should be?
So I think there are models. There are models globally. There are models that even in our own country, if you look at it, the Tata Trusts were set up so that the community would prosper as along with the businesses that would prosper. I think there is room even for legislation around the formation of trusts, around the formation of these kinds of structures that actually encourage legacy giving. We don't have those structures.
Okay.
We don't have as many institutionalized forms of giving that will actually survive the individual. So people are also worried. This is something we are learning as we are going.
Okay.
And again, this is my own personal viewpoint, but I feel with first generation of wealth, we're still kind of in the starvation mindset. We haven't still got to the point where we are like, let's give a lot more than we are actually giving right now. We're still sort of looking at our next generation, the generation after that, the generation after that. And only when we feel that our next 3 or 4 generations are comfortable, do we look at doing philanthropy. I think the idea is really to sort of see that the country belongs to all of us. So how are we going to actually drive change? And how do we drive change at scale? It is possible. People start with small ideas. They do a hell of a lot. And they do it with small money. What has happened here is that we can now do it with large money because we have the large money in our own country. The idea is, getting the imagination of philanthropists and making them believe that they can actually see the change in their own lifetime, which I hope would be something that would be exciting and inspirational for them.
You mentioned about family offices. I was going through the India Philanthropy Report 2025,
Yes.
and it talked about the fact that 2018 we had around 45 family offices, and 2024 we have 300 plus.
Exactly.
How has that changed? And this new cohort of family offices has changed the perception of the whole contours and the perception of philanthropy.
It has changed it, where a lot of the family offices, part of their wealth management is looking at also giving and looking at how they want to how much of their family wealth they want to actually earmark into formalized giving. There are a couple of challenges, Sudipto. We do not have as many philanthropy advisors in India today as we do in the West. There are few philanthropic products. Setting up a foundation or a shell foundation in a bank, still not easy to do. So those kinds of reforms are needed to really unlock capital at scale. And that's where I think the government and the finance ministry can play a huge role.
This also, I think this observation, you can help us understand it better. I find a lot of the people who are into philanthropy saying like they would be supporting quite a few causes.
Yes.
Okay. Say if I have 100 rupees, I'll put 20 in 5 causes instead of putting 100 rupees in one cause and scaling it up. You see that's the problem here?
It's changing.
Okay.
It's changing, and I can tell you that in the 12 years that I have been doing this, there's been a lot of change. Earlier, it used to be, today I'll support education, tomorrow I'll support old people, day after tomorrow I'll support climate. But that has been a definite change. And I think that's been driven by the next gen, where they are very clear that they believe in one particular topic area, whether it be climate, whether it be livelihoods, and they want to change that. The other big change that has come is this whole brick and mortar philanthropy, which is, let's create a building and name it after ourselves.
Yeah.
That has also changed. It has changed considerably, where we see a lot less of this building of buildings and much more of supporting programs. And I think that's a very good sign. It shows that our sector here is maturing. So I think those are the changes. Family offices, yes, we have, Kotak, and you have Waterfield and a couple of other wealth advisors, but you still don't have a strong philanthropy advisory practice. What the CSR bill did is it created consultants by the dozen that actually provided advice on how to spend that CSR money. We haven't seen that kind of, uptake on philanthropy advisory. You have a few networks, you have a few groups that play, but again, not as much as we need.
Just another observation is that the Indian diaspora. We have a very strong Indian diaspora doing very well. I think around 30 million or if not more. You think there's how active are they in this whole philanthropic thing? Because my sense is that they are doing stuff, but it's not enough.
So again, they are doing things, but it's so scattered that you're not seeing the results. It's only, when you hear of a large donation to an IIT or an IIM that was an alma mater that it actually gathers. Again, the issue is transparency and trust, and AVPN has actually partnered with the Monetary Authority of Singapore and also 2 organizations in India, Catalyst and Toolbox, to really, Social Lens actually, what they're called now, to create something called an Impact Collab platform. The problem is, people don't know, if they don't know the non-profit, they're very worried where their money will go. So what we have done is we've done some very tremendous due diligence, and we have more than 1,000 non-profits that are actually listed that you can then give your money to. And that sort of curated matchmaking, which has been totally due diligence, and again the network plays a big role. We have almost 800 member organizations who each have grantees that they have given to. Now, nobody gives money without doing due diligence. If you can actually pool that due diligence, which is what we have done, then you have a huge pool of non-profits that someone has done a lot of research on. That gives confidence to people in the diaspora about where they are giving their money and who they are giving it with. The other thing which we found, which has been good, is if you pool that money. So I'm more likely to give if I can give with you, especially if you are a big name. So for instance, if let's say we say, okay, the Birlas are giving, you will say, okay, I'll come and give with them. Or the Gates Foundation is giving, I will also like to give with them because I trust them. So AVPN has again tried to sort of, push this forward by creating pooled philanthropic funds, where we have brought together 5, 6, 8 organizations, and we've supported causes like STEM education for girls, looking at maternal and infant child health, looking at technology for agriculture, various themes that might be of interest, but really looking at pooling together. So, if you bring people together on a journey, especially if you can bring a peer group together, what you will find is that they're much more likely to do more, give more, and encourage each other. So we need to do much more of that. That is what I think is missing.
How do you suggest should we attract global capital, global philanthropic capital, say in Indian perspective, from a India standpoint?
I think we already get a lot of global philanthropic capital. Okay. Every foundation worth its name gives in India just because the causes are so much. But where we are struggling or we have struggled is getting global Indian capital to come in.
Okay.
And I think, there is a lot of, the Prime Minister has been very successful about his Make in India slogan. Yeah. If we did a Give in India slogan, that could also be something that you tie up to, we have this, every year we run this Pravasi Divas.
Yeah, exactly.
Run it with that. Let's, I have to say, I mean, he is so loved and liked wherever he goes, especially as far as the diaspora is concerned. We can really, that the government of India can really change that into a giving philosophy. Mm-hmm. We also have, and we don't count this, but we also have huge amount, you're only focusing on the rich and talking about the philanthropy, but we also have huge amount of remittances that come from Indians who are abroad.
Exactly.
That money also can be channeled towards both individual personal spending as well as social spending in the communities where this diaspora comes from. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of things that can be done, and I think the government is looking at some of it. Hopefully we'll see some change.
So any sort of a new philanthropic playbook that you are seeing in, especially with the advent of AI and other technological interventions which are happening, do you see the playbook changing?
Yes, for sure. So I think it's become a lot easier to do due diligence with AI. It's much more cost effective. It's also much more cost effective for non-profits to file reports, to kind of, communicate with funders. So I think that the cost of transactions in the philanthropy sector has come down significantly by the advent of AI. And that will only come down further. That's number one. The other things, the three things which I see, where philanthropy is changing, especially in Asia. One is more and more people are realizing, let's work together with government.
Okay.
I mean, whether we work on, marginalized communities through the aspirational districts program or through education, I think that's been huge. The second is looking at bringing faith-aligned giving into the mainstream.
Okay.
We have always found, or we touch faith-aligned giving with a barge pole.
Exactly.
Because we are very uncomfortable about it. But you and I started this conversation talking about how it's our faith which motivates us to give. So why are we uncomfortable about it? I think the time has come and governments across Asia are realizing that bringing faith into the mainstream discussion is really important. The big temple trusts all run hospitals, they run seva, whether we talk about langars, the gurdwaras. How do we make that more mainstream? That then actually taps into individual giving and retail giving. That's the second piece. The third is the corporate giving, which is only growing from strength to strength. Mm-hmm. And I think where corporates can also step up is not just in the CSR money, but actually in providing strategic guidance, providing IT support, providing financial support to non-profits to actually help them scale, because that's what they need. They don't know how to do that. I think the opportunity is enormous. We are bringing our global conference for the first time. It's our 13th edition of our conference. We're actually bringing it to India because we feel that the time is right, both for India to showcase itself as, the fourth largest economy, where we don't do a great job, Sudipto, of talking about the strides that we have also made. The millions of people that have actually been lifted out of absolute poverty. The fact that India is completely polio free. These are huge achievements in a country like ours. That to showcase what is the best in India and bring the best in Asia to India. I think that's really exciting. It's going to be in August, but we hope to see a lot of partnerships that will happen as a result of that.
So what would be the key theme of that?
The key theme of that is actually the Asia's blueprint for success, for inclusive development. I think we can all agree that the West has failed us miserably. We need a new blueprint for development, and I believe we have that. Mm-hmm. We have that blueprint. And it's really taking everybody along. Let's leave no one behind. I think in COVID we have realized that.
Absolutely.
And I mean, the government talks about a Viksit Bharat. Without a Viksit Bharat, you can't have a Viksit Asia. And with 66% of the world's population, without a Viksit Asia, you can't have a Viksit world. So, we better get it right.
Absolutely. But where do you see India in that blueprint? When you look at the Asia?
Very much as a leader. I think one of the things India has missed is looking east.
Okay.
This is a great way for us to exercise our soft power. If we can look at getting girls in school, if we can look at keeping girls in school, countries like Indonesia, countries like Malaysia are learning from us. If you look at Africa, they're not going to learn from Europe. If they have to learn from anyone, it is the Indian blueprint that they need to follow.
Absolutely.
So, if we can actually export our expertise on development, I think India will become the next superpower.
So, exporting of social development
models
is something that's
it's huge, and we should be taking the lead in that.
Yeah.
Because there are no other country has as many complex social problems as we have, and we've managed to address a fair degree of them, which is really remarkable, really, really remarkable.
I want to touch upon a point which is close to my heart, is climate.
Yes.
Climate and philanthropy. How are you seeing it shaping up? Because frankly speaking, to be very honest, if I can be brutal about it, I don't see too much philanthropy going into climate.
You're absolutely right. Very little philanthropy goes into climate.
Why?
The reason is that we want instant gratification. And by putting money into climate, you don't see the change happening right before your eyes. So, the idea is that who has seen tomorrow? So, I'm going to be putting millions of dollars into something that will hopefully change the needle, maybe in my children's generation, but probably in my grandchildren's generation. And people are not yet as altruistic to be able to do that. They're not doing that. And which is really sad, because we are hurtling, our children we are the only generation, or I'm speaking for myself, we are the only generation that is giving our children a worse planet than what was given to us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look at the pollution level.
Look at the pollution level. Look at the fact that we will be out of water in most countries sooner than we can tell. The fact that the 2-degree rise in temperature is going to create havoc with our health, with our livelihoods, with the food that we get to eat. So, given that we have created this mess, it is only important that we also pay to fix it. But it's not. And Asians especially are amongst the smallest contributors to climate finance.
Is there a specific, could you figure it out why?
So I think for the longest time we thought it's not our problem.
Okay.
It's the government's problem.
Okay.
Or somebody else's problem. So I don't have to fix it. Also, we don't do a great job of explaining what climate is. So you talked about pollution. If you go and tell someone, let's fix the air quality in Delhi, 10 people will put up their hand. But if you talk to someone about, particulate matter, what it is, then their eyes glaze over. So we haven't made it simple to understand. We haven't created smaller solutions. So, when you think about it, you have a lot of corporates, you have a lot of individual philanthropists that support things like organic recycling,
exactly,
waste management. That is all related to climate, but we don't want to call that climate. We are very clear. Are you supporting mitigation? Are you supporting adaptation? What are you really doing here? Are you looking at climate technology? And then the average Joe philanthropist looks at you and says, oh, this is too much for me to understand. I do not know which side of the debate I will go to, so I will just not fund.
Also, it's become politicized in the West.
It has.
And I think people don't want to get into a political debate.
100%. 100%. But it's really important, and it's going to affect each and every one of our lives.
I think luckily it's not yet political in Asia.
It's not. And again, I think, young people are playing a huge role. You see young children talking about the fact that they can't breathe. Exactly. I don't think anyone could have made the change with regards to bursting firecrackers than what children in schools did.
Exactly.
So I think we have to start there. We have to sensitize children who will then sensitize their parents. There's no other way.
Absolutely. It's the other way around, yeah?
Yeah, it is the other way around.
Yeah, in fact, I think, of course, that was couple of months back, we saw protest in the streets of Delhi.
Yes.
Because of the pollution,
yes.
This thing. And I think this is the first time of my memorable, this thing that
Because now it's come to touch you.
Exactly.
So, it's when it was somebody else's house burning, you can say, oh, okay, I'll look the other way, but now it's your own house burning. So what choice do you have? So yeah, we have to, and we have to move today. Actually had to move yesterday, but okay, let's move today.
But why is it that, of course you could share a wider perspective here, why is it that the political establishment, the powers that be, are not yet sensitized to this, the pollution, the climate?
I think they are sensitized to it. I think that the question is, how are we solving for it? And I think it's a tough balancing act. We are also looking at economic growth. We are trying to balance that with sort of the climate priorities. And it's a question that unfortunately most developing countries do face. Mm-hmm. And it's very easy sometimes for the West to say that you need to fix the climate issues, you need to, not use coal. In a country like ours where coal unfortunately employs, millions of people, it's not that easy. So I think, there are no hard lines. We have to be a little bit practical. We have to also be focused on what the economic circumstances are and push the climate agenda along. So it is a balancing act. And I think the powers that be are trying. Maybe they can try a little bit more. But I think we also have to do our own sort of, share. If we have odd or even cars, don't go buy an odd car and an even car as well, so that both days you are going,
Absolutely.
We also need to do our part. And if we all do that, then, there will be a difference.
From a AVPN perspective, are you working on climate? Are you sort of sensitizing your members on that?
Very much so. So we launched a climate action platform way back in 2018 with the express purpose of getting more Asian funders to fund climate. What we did actually a year and a half ago was launch what we called a climate and health lighthouse. Because again, more people understand if you look at the intersectionality. See, why are you looking at climate? You said pollution. It affects your throat, you can't breathe.
Exactly.
So if you explain to people that climate is not just climate on its own, it affects health, it affects education, it affects livelihoods, people are more likely to understand and fund it. So what we have done with this climate and health livelihood is that we have raised a $5 million fund which is supporting, again to go back to business models, really supporting business models that actually come up with solutions at the intersectionality of climate and health.
Okay.
So really looking at something that is not just philanthropy driven, but that will actually effect change for the longer term. So can we actually really look at creating small and medium businesses that will focus on solving both climate issues and climate and health issues?
So is this network active in India?
Yes, we have made investments in India as well.
Okay.
So yes, very much so. We have looking at projects around, not just sort of clean cook stoves which have been around for centuries, but really looking at crop forecasting, looking at what the 2-degree temperature rise is going to do to women who have small cottage industries, looking at what is going to happen in slums. So all of those are where we have made investments.
The heat aspects.
Heat aspects.
Yeah.
Heat stress.
Heat stress.
Specifically, yes.
Yeah, that's something that we see in North India is
very much so, very much so. And you look at all the tin roofs, I mean, they are ovens that are baking people inside.
Absolutely. In terms of, you spoke about the network in India, and you also referred to the fact that India is one of the second largest market for you in terms of number of members.
Yes.
Take us through, what are the areas that the members are sort of investing in, and what is their interest? And could you take us through some of the...
Sure. So most of our members still invest in education. So roughly 70% of our profile of members do invest in education. And again, I look at that as being first generation wealth, because you have gotten out of your sort of, lesser income status because of education. So most Asian philanthropists, and Indians are no different, see education as a way of giving back.
Okay.
And it's all about, teaching a man to fish versus just giving him the money.
Yeah.
So I think education has been really big. We have seen a lot of growth in health. Mm-hmm. We have seen a lot of growth, in looking now in the last couple of years at climate related topics.
Okay.
Sort of whether we're looking at clean water, whether we're looking at heat stress, whether we're looking at agricultural productivity, they've been all huge areas of interest for our Indian members. The idea for us has always been in India, and we haven't succeeded, and I would love to look at how we can do that, and hopefully the global conference will be a way to do that, is really to move this philanthropic discussion outside Delhi, Bombay and Bangalore.
Okay.
Because every list you look at that comes out of India, you would think we have only 40 philanthropists. It's the same 40 names that keep coming up.
A different list, in different
lists.
Yeah.
So how do we actually take this discussion to smaller towns, to tier 2, tier 3 cities, where actually a lot of philanthropy also happens? How do you work with more other networks like the Rotary networks, like the Lions networks, which have been active in small town India for a very long time? So that's our goal at AVPN, is really kind of cascading this network effect so that it moves away from the usual suspects to bringing in more people into the discussion. Our hope is that by getting people in the room with people that they admire. So, bringing somebody from Surat with Mr. Tata on a table, hopefully they will be more inspired to do something that has a longer term effect. It's actually influencing larger numbers of community and looking at funding different aspects that are not funded.
So you feel there's a huge untapped potential out there,
Huge,
tier 2, tier 3 towns and cities.
Huge. Look at the money we have there. It's enormous. I mean, I understood from someone that the most number of Mercedes cars were sold actually in Aurangabad. How many philanthropists from Aurangabad have you ever seen on any one of those top 40 Indian philanthropist lists? I don't think very many.
Why? Why is it that? Is it because of lack of... in today's
it's an
world,
elitist group.
Exactly.
It's an elitist group. You don't have a South Mumbai or a South Delhi accent or an address. So you're not invited. And that's the other thing which sets AVPN apart, is that, it's a network for everybody. Why are we leaving people out? Philanthropy is a sector, or impact is a sector where there should be no competition. It should only be about collaboration. Let's bring as many people as we can in. But it's run like a club. Very difficult to get membership.
So how does one become a member of AVPN?
Very easy.
Yeah?
We welcome everyone. As long as you want to give and you're clear about giving, you're most welcome to join. You join up on our website and you sign up and you become a member. It's a subscription-based model because, as I said, people don't like to pay for networks. So our membership fees covers a part of the cost. But you do join a very large network that gives you access to, insights from across Asia. That is sort of your guide, if you want to call it, and someone you can go to and ask questions about anything. Where to give, who to give with, how to give. We will, if we don't know it, we'll find someone who does and connect you.
So are you looking at sort of, you mentioned about tier 2, tier 3 towns. Are you looking at sort of, ramping up your presence
Very
out
much
there?
so, very much so. So the whole idea of bringing the conference to India was really, how can we scale this? How can we scale it? And there's no better place for scale than India. How do we get more people into the room so that they can share their experiences? I'm sure we've all heard of the businessman in Surat who buys all of his staff a house or a car. Why can't we get many more of those?
Every Diwali,
Every Diwali, exactly. I need to go work for him. But we need to find more of those. We need to find more of those that actually do these things, and actually celebrate them.
You mentioned about the fact that, when you started off in your early part of the career, you were sort of, we all know that you could, in India, you could see development of the scalable, cost-effective, solutions at the grassroots level. How do you sort of scale that? How do you is scaling an issue out there? Because we keep hearing this again and again, that scalability is an issue, especially in the social impact space. And
so it's a question of two things. One is funding. So, you funding at its early stage and funding when it's sort of series C and beyond is easy to get. What happens in the middle is the valley of death. There is no funding there. So philanthropists have only X budget. When they've exhausted that budget, they'll be like, okay, I'm ready to pass you on. The problem we have right now is that nobody is ready to take that baton.
Okay.
And the larger banks are much more interested when you have, a much larger market share, you are much bigger.
The collateral. And
you have collateral. So that in-between phase is where I'm hoping blended finance comes in, or some other kind of innovative structures which people are trying will come in and will take scale, so that they can actually help carry them from, a small cottage industry to actually a viable business. That's the first challenge, the capital. The second is really the capacity building.
Okay.
So what happens is that as an investor, I'm giving in the money, but the entrepreneur doesn't have the ability to think beyond a certain size. So who's actually holding his or her hand to actually help him understand what scale looks like? And should he even be looking at scale? So we need both to go hand in hand. We need capacity building, so someone has to pay for that. And we need to have finance to come in so that, the business can continue to grow. Both things are at this point not there in full strength.
So when you talk about Viksit Bharat, 2047, and you mentioned the fact that, you have to, if you are a developed country, there has to be aspiration for the social sector as well,
Yes.
So what is the vision? What is the aspiration, do you think, or the potential that we need to tap? What is the sort of...
So I think we need to look at really sort of, making some of these entrepreneurial business models viral, really. Because I don't think there's any lack of investment capital. It's a question of finding each other. And we are not finding as many as we can. Some of them just die out because they don't have the exposure. Everyone doesn't end up in Shark Tank or whatever tank they are. So, you need to kind of have a steady pipeline and a steady beauty parade where they can keep coming and showing themselves. Because I do believe that there is an appetite for investment, and that's only growing.
And you see India's place, India's position in this whole scheme of things, say by 2047, how do you see that?
I see India being a leader with it. Because, this kind of frugal innovation is by far here, more than anywhere else. I think, we are both competitive and hungry at the same time. So we are able to develop some of these. And I see countries, whether it be Singapore, whether it be the UAE, whether it be Saudi Arabia, they're all desperate to attract these entrepreneurs. They are offering them the world to come and set up their businesses in their country, to say that the IP belongs to them. This is our time to stop that IP leaving the country.
Okay.
And really looking at, securing that investment for development here.
Interesting. So what you are saying is basically the scalability part, the fact that, okay, with Jugaad...
Both scalability and innovation.
Okay.
I don't think just scalability. I think innovation also plays a huge role. Because, you are actually facing that problem, you have thought of the innovative solution. Now, if that innovative solution works in a district in Bihar, it will also work in a district in UP, it will work in a district in Assam. So, how do we actually take that and make sure that the siloization doesn't happen?
And where do you see AVPN going forward in the next 5-10 years, when you look at this scheme of...
So, I really see us being a marketplace for both solutions and investors looking to invest in solutions.
Okay.
I see us scaling that part. Where we are already a trusted network of funders. If we can also become that marketplace for innovation and innovative solutions, then matching the two together is what you need. That's the magic that is needed. And we also bring in capital from across Asia, including the diaspora capital that we talked about. So I see a network like ours as being integral to this to this 2047 story. 100%.
And diaspora can play a very big role.
They will play, and increasingly I think they want to play a much bigger role, much bigger role.
Great. That's a lovely note to end the show, and thank you Naina, for taking us through and explaining to us it's a lovely way to sort of, I would say, we just hope that we are able to realize our potential.
No, I'm sure, and I'm sure we will, and I hope to see you at our global conference, because I really feel that'll be the first step in showcasing what's good in India and great in India with what's good in Asia. So please come.
Look forward.
Thanks, Shri.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Naina.
Thanks a lot.